Module 3 of Indian Culture and Heritage. In earlier sections of this module, we have discussed about the role of Sanskrit, the Vedas, the Upanishads and the Itihasas. In this session, we will be discussing the sections Puranas, the Buddhist and Jain literature in Pali, Prakrit and Sanskrit language, and other Sanskrit literatures. The word Purana means the ancient or the old. These are religious texts narrated orally and handed down for many centuries. Puranas cover a wide spectrum of topics ranging from history of the creation, about the evolution of the universe, to the many deities, sages, kings and demons, up to the death and about matter beyond the death of the body, and also about the journey of the soul. Everything is imparted as a collection of interesting stories, allegories and historical facts and folklores. Even the highest Vedantic principles are packaged in a nice and in a very easy way to understand for even the very unlettered common folk. Puranas are the way to reach out to the masses with the principles, philosophies and doctrines of the Vedantas. There are 18 popular Puranas and 18 upa-puranas. Puranas include histories, stories, beliefs, legends and values. They occupy a very unique position in the Sanskrit literature of Sanatana Dharma. They are regarded next in importance only to the Vedas and the Itihasas. They carry spiritual messages, educate common people about values, ethics and traditions through parables and fables, stories and legends. The 18 Puranas and the upa-puranas are a compendium of factual as well as mythological works that help to propagate duties, responsibilities, ways and methods of Sanatana Dharma. They follow the lines of the epics, and the earliest Puranas were compiled in the Gupta period. Now let us see some more information about these Puranas. Who wrote them? When were they written? And what are their names? What are these popular 18 Puranas? What are their names? Right? Now, these were written between 11th century before Common Era and 4th century before Common Era. During this time period, it evolved. Okay, now who wrote them? These are written by that same sage who wrote Mahabharata, the Itihasa Mahabharata. Who wrote Mahabharata? Yes, sage Vedavyasa. Yes, what was his original name? Krishna Dvaipayana. Yeah, it is that same sage who wrote Mahabharata. He produced these Puranas, and over this period of so many centuries, from 4th century to 11th century, it evolved further. Now, let us see what are their names. They are Bhagavat, Brahmanda, Brahma Vaivarta, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Linga, Skanda, Garuda, Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Vamana, Markandeya, Narada, Agni, Vayu and Padma. You notice the avatars, the out of the Dasha avatar, all the avatar names are also coming. So every avatar name that you saw here, right? Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Vamana, all these are nothing but the Puranas written on those avatars. Right? Very interesting, right? Now let us see some more interesting details about the Puranas. The Puranas are full of religious, moral as well as spiritual messages. Now how are these messages transmitted? These messages are transmitted through parables, stories and interesting legends. Now these hold a very great measure of influence on the religious aspect of the people as well as their moral fabric. They also provide many valuable historical and geographical information about that time period for that region. Like for example, By reading a Purana, we can come to know when a landmass vanished from a specific location. Like how this river Saraswati suddenly vanished, right? We come to know of the existence of river Saraswati only through the Vedas and the Puranas, right? Like that, we can also come to know when a tsunami or an earthquake occurred in a specific location. For example, let's look at this sloka from one of these Puranas about Bharat. Uttaram yat samudrasya himadreschaiva dakshinam varsham tad bharatam nama bharati yatra santati. So this Puranic verse from Vishnu Purana states that region, that is the country, Varsha means country, Varsham means country, country to the north of ocean and to the south of Himalayas. Uttaram yat samudrasya, country to the north of ocean. Himadraschaiva dakshinam, to the south of Himalayas, is named as Bharat and its people are called as Bharatiyas. So this information is talking about the boundaries of this land called Bharat, where in Vishnu Purana. The Puranas serve to educate the knowledgeable ones, as well as it helps to reach out to the simple, unlettered folks. How can they reach out to a large spectrum of audience, from a very knowledgeable to a very simple, unlettered folks, common folks? Through the stories and legends. Let's look at what the 18 Puranas give us. They give us religious and spiritual messages. They give geographical and historical information. They give us information about many god forms, many kings, heroes, sages, saints, and even demons that trouble those sages and saints and kings. And they carry the messages through legends, sermons, stories, and that's how they reach out to a very wide spectrum of people, right from the most knowledgeable till the very simple common people. Now let's look at when these Puranas became very popular. The earliest of the Puranas were compiled during the Gupta period. We can say that the Gupta period is called as a golden era for the Puranas. Many smritis or law books were compiled during Gupta period. Writing commentaries for these smritis began after the Gupta period. Every Purana has what are called as Pancha Lakshanas. Pancha means 5. Lakshanas means attributes. Every Purana has got 5 attributes. Now, who first discovered that every Purana has got these so-called 5 attributes? One lexicographer by name Amarasinha, he came across this pattern of these 5 attributes when he was reading those Puranas. Amarasinha discovered that every Purana carry within them these 5 attributes. Now let us see what are these Pancha Lakshanas. Sargascha, Pratisargascha, Vamsho Manvantaranicha, Vamshanucharitam Chaiva Puranam Pancha Lakshanam. This is that sloka that defines those 5 attributes. Now let us repeat that one more time. Sargascha, Pratisargascha, Vamso Manvantaranicha, Vamsanucharitam Chaiva Puranam Pancha Lakshanam. Now let us see each of these 5 attributes, the meaning of these attributes. Sargascha, creation. Pratisargascha is secondary creation. Vamsa means the genealogy. And the 4th one, Manvantarani, that is the various Manvantaras, the yugas, the periods. And the last one, Vamsanucharitam, that is the various historical details of each of those dynasties. Now, of the five attributes, the first three, Sarga, Pratisarga, and Vamsa, that is creation, secondary creation, and genealogy, right? These three directly relates to the signs. And the last two, the fourth and the fifth ones, the Manvantaranis, talk about the time period of the various Manus, as I said just now. And the last one, the fifth one, the Vamsanucharitam, details about the various dynasties. These are basically the stories and the incidences, the historical accounts from the two itihasas. So, what are the two itihasas? We saw them earlier, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. So, Vamsanucharitam details all the historical incidences drawn from the two epics. Now, let's go back to this Manvantaras. Now, Manvantara are nothing but the time window. Every time window is ruled by a specific Manu. So, now, what is our Manvantara? Our present Manvantara is the seventh one, and every Manvantara has got a name. This Manvantara is called as Vaivasvata Manvantara. This is just additional information for you to know. Yeah, the present Manvantara is the seventh Manvantara, and the name of our Manvantara is Vaivasvata Manvantara. Now let us wrap up this section about the Puranas with little more interesting information. There are tens of thousands of verses of knowledge in all these Puranas. You look at the listing here in the screen, sometimes the list of this popular 18 slightly differ owing to different traditions in our Sanatana Dharma, the Hinduism. Some traditions include Vayu, whereas another tradition includes Bhavishya Purana. But these differences do not in any way undermine or bolster up one over the other. Also, oftentimes, you might even notice that a single incident, a historic event, would be repeated in many Puranas in different ways. Why so? Because you see, ours was a oral tradition. For many centuries, there were no written implements or recording devices like how we have today, right? So, people commit the knowledge in their memories, in their brains, and whatever they commit, they hand over to the next generation, to the equally committed students, right? So that is how we still have all these Puranic knowledges intact with us. This kind of repeated references inside those Puranas ensure that those anecdotes do not get lost over a period of time. Now, all this Puranic knowledge have been handed over solely by retrieving from memory and committing to the student's memory. Shall we say one big thank you with lots of gratitude to Vedavyasa, who has given us all these 18 Puranas and the 18 upa-puranas. We hope you don't stop with this basic knowledge presented here. Please read and enjoy these Puranic stories, and please do share it with your friends, because ours is a oral tradition. That is how we continue our tradition. The next section of this chapter is about Buddhist and Jain literature in Pali, Prakrit and Sanskrit language. Before we delve upon the Buddhist and Jain literature, let us first discuss these three languages: Prakrit, Pali and Sanskrit. Prakrit, the very word Prakrit means of common nature, of common origin. It emerged from Sanskrit. It is vernacular. It was in use. People were using it, practicing it. So it is of common nature, and the grammar of Prakrit kept evolving, changing as the people were using it. Prakrit is the main language that was used in dissemination of Jain doctrines. As it was in common usage, it became very easy to learn. Next comes Pali. Pali emerged from Sanskrit. Just like Prakrit, it's also vernacular. Pali means a series of a line of text. Its grammar also, exactly like Prakrit, it kept evolving and changing over a period of usage. Pali is mostly used by Buddhists and therefore was the language used for the dissemination of Buddhist ideas. It is also pretty easy to learn, just like Prakrit. Now let's go to Sanskrit. Sanskrit is undoubtedly the most ancient and it is classical, it's refined, it's a very structured language and it is ornate in nature. In fact, the word Sanskrit literally means perfected or refined. Thanks to Panini and Patanjali, many more grammarians, lexicographers could work on the works produced by Panini and Patanjali and perfect it further and give it to us such a robust language. It has remained unchanged over a very long period of time. There are literary works in both prose and poetry forms in Sanskrit. And the dissemination of Sanatana Dharma, that is what we call as present day Hinduism, happened basically through Sanskrit. And because of its very detailed grammar, it is a bit difficult to learn. Now let's start with Buddhist literature. As seen earlier, the Buddhist works were predominantly written in Pali. Pali was popularly known and spoken in the Magadha and South Bihar regions. Buddhist literatures can be classified into two. They are canonical and non-canonical works. Now, what are canonical works? Canonical works are those that conform, that follow the preset standards, and they are the recognized literature of this religion and the sect. The literature that come under canonical works are best represented as tripitakas. The word tripitakas means the three baskets. You see, the word three is also same as in Sanskrit. Now let us see what are these tripitakas. They are Vinaya Pitaka, that deals with the rules and regulations of daily life. Then comes the Sutta Pitaka, the dialogues and discourses on morality and the deals with the dharma. They call it dhamma. And the last one is Abhidhamma Pitaka. This Pitaka, the third basket, it deals with the philosophy and the metaphysics, including ethics and psychology. Now let us move to non-canonical works. Non-canonical works are those that are not formally recognized by the canons or the rules of the sect or a religion, but they are informally in vogue, again through oral tradition. The non-canonical literature is best represented by the Jatakas. The Jatakas are the most interesting stories on the previous births of the Prince Siddhartha, that is the Gautama Buddha. It was believed that before he was born as Prince Siddhartha, as and then attaining the Buddhahood, he passed through more than 550 births, in many cases even in the form of animals. Each birth story is called a Jataka. These literatures belong to the time period ranging from 6th century BC to the 2nd century BC, which is a time period about 4 centuries. Besides recording the 550 births of Gautama Buddha, they also throw light on the political events of those time periods, and they carry the details of the socio-economic conditions that prevailed in those 4 centuries. Now let's move to the Jain literature. The Jain texts were written in Prakrit, and when were they finally compiled? They finally compiled around the 6th century AD. Where did this happen? The compilations all happened in this region called Vallabhi in the present day Gujarat. What are the important works of Jain literature? The important works are Angas, Upangas, Prakirnas, Chedap Sutras and Mala Sutras. And who are those notable Jain scholars? Two most important people. They are Haribhadra Suri, he is from 8th century Common Era, and Hemachandra Suri, he belongs to the 12th century Common Era. Now, apart from the religious aspect of the literature, what do they offer? These Jain literatures, they contain many passages which help us to reconstruct the political conditions, the political history of eastern Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. Now, what are the other things that Jain literature presented us with, offered us? Jainism also helped in the growth of a very rich literature comprising poetry, philosophy, political history, grammar, and also the text repeatedly refers to trade and commerce. Traders and commerce. Now let's get to the last section, Sanskrit literature. Before we delve deeper into Sanskrit literature, we should understand that most of the Sanskrit literature or all of the Sanskrit literature belongs to the ancient Indian literature. At that point in time, there were no religion. Though we attempt to classify all literature as religious and non-religious works, ancient Indians did not call or consider their customs, traditions, and way of life as any specific religion. Their way of life was in harmony with nature, and it came to be called as Sanatana Dharma. Many of these Indians, their works, they authored it in Sanskrit. Therefore, non-religious Sanskrit literature were also called as Sanatana Dharma literature only. There is a huge body of works in various philosophy of thoughts about the creation and evolution, the grammar, governance, art and crafts, science and commerce, all can be called, so to say, non-religious works. Now for the religious works. The 4 Vedas, Rig, Yajur, Sama and Atharva Veda, the Samhitas, hymns and chants while performing the sacrifices and rituals, the Brahmanas, the instructions on the performance of those sacrifices and rituals, the Aranyakas, dealing with the science, philosophy behind these rituals, and the final one, the Upanishads, deals with the final aim of the above listed sacrifices and rituals. That is, the Upanishads is the Vedanta. Recall, we delved into these topics in the earlier sections. The next in this series is the Puranas. The Puranas are the historical incidences, the related morals from the epics, the Itihasas. And what are the 2 Itihasas? The next is that, the historical epics, Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And we are talking about religious works, so Buddhist works, as we saw earlier, the Tripitakas and the Jatakas tales, and of course the Jain literature, we saw 5 divisions under them. Recall Angas, Upangas, Prakirnas, and the Sutras, the Chedap Sutras and the Mala Sutras. And the last one, the devotional hymns, these are songs, compilations to teach duty, devotion and wisdom. Now, let us see what can be classified under non-religious works. So, as we said earlier, the Sanatana Dharma was not perceived as a religion. It was a way of life of all these people living in this region called Bharat, the region encompassed by the Himalayas to the north and the three oceans to the south. These people authored many valuable works on creation, nature, health, engineering, right conduct, about polity, management, one's duty at various stages of life, even about surgery, medicine. Many of these works can be classified under Shastras and sciences. They are not per se religious, so they can be called as scientific and sciences and non-religious. They even wrote about the highest philosophy, which is duty towards one's soul. These are relevant for all times, for all people, regardless of their religious practice. Now let us see some more of these non-religious works. As such, it is very difficult to draw a clear line between religious and non-religious texts. Even Sanskrit dramas have plots woven around historical heroes like Lord Rama, Krishna, who are worshipped as gods. Some of these works purely on grammar, politics, philosophy and economics are Ashtadhyayi, the grammar text that was written by, who wrote this? Ashtadhyayi, we came across this. Yes, the great grammarian Panini. Then the Niti Shatakam, written by Bhartrihari. Bhagavad Gita and Uddhava Gita. Bhagavad Gita, you all know, is written by famous Vedavyasa. Even Uddhava Gita was written by Vedavyasa. These are philosophical texts. And Ashtavakra Gita, yet another high philosophy written by sage Ashtavakra. And Viveka Chudamani, the crest jewel of discrimination. This is written by Adi Shankara. And Arthashastra and Chanakya Niti, written by Chanakya, or another name is Kautilya. So these are some of the Sanskrit literature which can be classified under non-religious works. Now, to wrap up the section about the Buddhist Jain literature in Pali, Prakrit and Sanskrit, let's take a quick look at the works of Sanatana Dharma and all of its offshoot religions. Now, as we saw earlier, the four Vedas and the Upa-Vedas, the epic Ramayana and the Mahabharata, then the Sikhism, their main literature is Guru Granth Sahib, and the Buddhist literature, which comprises of Tripitakas and the Jatakas tales, right? And the Jain literature comprising of Angas, Upangas and everything. So that brings us to the close of this section. I hope that you enjoyed learning this section as much as I enjoyed presenting it to you. Sai Ram.